7 a.m., August 30th, 2025. Three Flamingo missiles left Odessa at dawn. They flew low, heavy, and obvious, as if daring S-400s to shoot. At the same moment, Kamikaze drones cut in quietly, unseen. What looked like a brute strike was actually a precisely timed trap. In 30 minutes, Crimea would learn how fast a few seconds can kill command. Dawn in Russian command felt routine and calculated. Officers crowded the Secret Service building in the army for pre-planned strikes. Maps showed Staropol, Sevastopol, and choke points along the coastal axis. Helicopter aprons were scheduled to open at first light. Patrol plans along Sevastopol's coastal security line are locked in for the morning shift. S-400 batteries were active, their crews confident in coverage and reaction cycles. Intelligence nodes flagged Ukrainian activity as defensive movement, not an offensive salvo. Commanders read missile transports as a nuisance, a feint before a larger assault. They prioritized offensive windows, manpower shifts, and coastal landing timings. Crucially, a millisecond-level tracking delay never rose on their threat matrix. While Moscow planned attack sequencing, Kyiv synchronized a timing asymmetry. That asymmetry turned routine logistics into a vulnerability ripe for exploitation. Russia expected a maneuver, but Ukraine planned a surgeon strike through time itself. Ukraine did not intend to overpower Crimea's defenses with raw force. The strategy hinged on something far more dangerous: timing. Military planners in Kyiv recognized that the most vulnerable moment in any layered defense system is the split second when information lags behind reality. If they could create even a millisecond delay in how Russian radar and command systems process threats, the entire shield could be forced open. So the operation was designed in two synchronized waves. First came the UJ-26 Kamikaze drones, flying low, slow, and quiet from multiple approach corridors. They were aimed at power distribution cabinets, waveguide channels, and communication relay points, the components that feed radar signals. Damaging those points does not cause a blackout. It causes delayed recognition, which is something far more paralyzing. A radar that updates late is a radar that cannot classify or intercept in time. That delay was the actual trap. Only after those drones were confirmed inbound did the Flamingo missiles launch. 3 missiles, each weighing 7 tons, carrying bunker-busting warheads, descended into a terrain-following flight profile no more than 20 to 30 meters above the sea. Flying at subsonic speed, just under 950 kilometers per hour, they moved beneath the radar horizon itself, invisible until too close to stop. Their navigation stack was redundant. GNSS, inertial guidance, radar altimeter, and digital terrain mapping. If one signal failed, another took over. Jamming could frustrate direction, but it could not prevent arrival. The key was synchronization. The drones and flamingos were timed to hit simultaneously. Those would introduce seconds of confusion, and those seconds would become kill time for the missiles. In modern warfare, the difference between a tracked missile and an invisible one is measured in fractions of a heartbeat. This was sharpened into a blade, and the goal has never been dramatic rubble. Redundancy was non-negotiable here. Every route had fallback guidance and terminal updates. Communications flowed on staggered channels to avoid a single-point failure. Operators rehearsed the timing until the window became predictable. This was engineered timing, calculated to turn seconds into strategic weeks. The first contact with Crimea did not come with noise. It came with shape and motion, almost too small to matter. UJ-26 Kamikaze drones moved in at low altitude, tracing the coastline like shadows hugging the surf. Their composite bodies and narrow cross-sections gave them the faintest radar footprint. On screens inside Russian control stations, they appeared as brief pulses that disappeared before operators could classify them. No alarms rang, no intercept orders were triggered. These drones were not meant to bring spectacular explosions. Their task was to break timing. The first strike hit the power distribution cabinet of the 96 L6AP detection radar. The dish on the tower kept rotating, still proud and intact, but the internal timing chain no longer matched reality. Radar sweeps returned data a fraction of a second late. That delay is invisible to the eye, yet lethal to defense. Operators watching their screens saw targets, but the targets were already somewhere else. A second drone slammed into the waveguide assembly of the coastal surveillance array near Sevastopol. The antenna did not collapse. The building did not fall. But the line that carried the signal to the processing gear snapped. The radar continued to scan in perfect circles, yet what it sent to the control station was a smear of confused interference. Technicians tried to refresh the feed, convinced it was a temporary glitch. Panzer crews fired on instinct when additional drones appeared. 2 were shot down, 4 were not. Those 4 struck relay boxes and fiber junctions that tied the regional picture together. This didn't blind the network entirely. It staggered it. Recognition cycles slowed. Target sorting faltered, and priority queues hesitated. The system still worked, but it went slower than the threat it needed to stop. Inside Russian air defense rooms, nothing looked catastrophic or broken. Yet the most important element in the entire system was gone: time. That was the window Ukraine needed. The sky had not opened yet, but the lock on the door had already been removed. The Flamingo missiles began their run long after the drones had already distorted the air defense picture. They did not descend in a dramatic dive. They slid in quietly, almost level with the sea, traveling just high enough to clear the waves and just low enough to remain beneath radar sightlines. At that altitude, the Earth itself becomes cover. Curvature hides the missile until it is almost on top of the target. A radar sees it only when the distance has already collapsed into danger. Each Flamingo carried a 7-ton body and a warhead designed to break reinforced interiors. The navigation stack guided every movement with layered redundancy. GNSS provided positioning. Inertial navigation corrected drift. A radar altimeter read the surface below. Digital terrain reference matched stored geographic data against live altitude. If one signal failed, another took over instantly. Jamming could interfere, but it could not mislead. The speed remained deliberate. Subsonic travel at roughly 950 kilometers per hour prevented heat signature spikes and gave the missile full control over its terminal glide. Fast enough to close distance, slow enough to hold the low altitude window where interception is hardest. The coastline rose and fell in gentle curves, and the missile adjusted with smooth, precise corrections as if sliding along a wire. Russian operators saw increased anomalies on their screens, but could not place them. The network was working, only slower. 10 seconds, then 5, then 1. Those intervals dictate life and failure. A defense system must recognize, classify, authorize, and fire within the narrowest slice of time. When recognition drags even slightly, the rest of the chain collapses behind it. The Flamingos were not racing the radar. They were racing the radar's ability to decide. In the control room, someone finally identified incoming signatures. By then, the missiles were already inside the gap created by the drone strikes. The intercept window had closed before anyone realized it existed. 3 missiles were now committed to targets that would not survive their arrival. The first Flamingo reached Armeniansk. It did not aim for the facade of the FSB complex. It aimed through it. The warhead was set with a delayed fuse, designed to breach, then detonate inside the structure. The missile entered at a stable 20 to 25 meters altitude and drove directly into the command and communications room. Concrete cracked, but the building did not collapse. Instead, the blast erupted inside the nerve center. Rack systems shattered, power trunks tore open, and circuit trays folded. Monitors flickered back to life on emergency power, but the network behind them was dead. To the officers inside, it was a nightmare, more dangerous than darkness. A commander cannot act when the screens show ghosts. Time was now wasted on the wrong picture. And in high-tempo operations, wasted time becomes irreversible loss. Flamingo 2 arrived seconds later. It struck the junction between the power distribution line and the field communications cabin. This was the artery that fed the entire complex its connective tissue. The detonation severed power routing and burned out transmission fiber. The building still stood, but its function was gone for weeks. Repairing power is easy, but rebuilding operational communication architecture? Absolutely not. Meanwhile, Flamingo 3 skimmed the coastline toward Sevastopol. The target was a refueling pier and the command cabin controlling patrol boat movement. The explosion ruptured the fuel supply manifold, splintered mooring pylons, and hurled debris into the surf. One hovercraft-class patrol vessel lost its securing line and slammed against the pier, badly damaged. A port that looked intact from above was now functionally paralyzed. None of the buildings looked spectacularly destroyed, nor did the skyline change shape. But the ability to command, communicate, refuel, deploy, and defend had been cut at the root. The S-400 system in Crimea was active and staffed. It had the range to track cruise missiles and the interceptors to kill them. On paper, nothing about this operation should have succeeded. But the Flamingos did not challenge the system head-on. They moved in a space where physics, timing, and terrain favored the attacker. Flying at 20 to 30 meters above the surface places a missile below the radar horizon. At that altitude, the Earth bends the radar line of sight away from the target. A radar only sees the missile once it clears the curve, which happens when the missile is already close. Detection becomes recognition, and recognition becomes reaction. That sequence requires seconds, and Ukraine removed those. There were moments where the operation could have failed. 2 drones were destroyed before reaching their targets. One radar node recovered faster than expected. A Panzer battery fired interceptors at Flamingo 1, and if its lock had stabilized, forward interception might have been possible. GNSS interference affected Flamingo 2 during its final approach, and without inertial and altimeter backup, the missile could have missed by tens of meters, striking harmless exterior concrete. None of that happened because the redundancy was intentional. Every Flamingo carried multiple guidance layers, and every route was planned with terrain reference fallback. And the missiles were launched with strict time-on-target discipline that forced Russian defenses to solve several problems at once. What failed in Crimea was the time required to think. The question now is, can Russia afford another morning like this one? Will their commander now tighten the shield, or will Ukraine press the gap? Tell us in the comments. And if you want breakdowns like this the moment they happen, hit subscribe. Someone in this war is already planning the next move.